thinking in terms of like broad goals, like where I want my core to get to by the end of the month or over the next couple of weeks or by the end of the semester. And that's great, right? That's going to guide your 6-week core plan. And then, but obviously with each individual core, you need to have like a specific goal, right? If I want my guys to be friends by the end of the semester, what are we going to do this week? It's like this week, I want them to share their stories together, right? Next week, I want them to hang out together outside of core, right? These are the specific goals that you want week to week. Because when it's so broad, it's like, man, I could do all sorts of things, and it just gets scattered. But yeah, that's the one thing about goals I want to say. All right, I'm going to welcome up Cort, Andrea, Paul, and Jessica. So these are 4 of our staff who have led core or are leading core. And so they have a lot of recent experience. They're experiencing the same things you guys are, the same generation you guys are, the same issues. And so this is just a Q&A session. I know some of you have been leading core a lot, a couple of years. Some of you, this is your first time. We welcome any and all questions. All right, so ask away.
Pete, do you give that to one of them?
Go ahead.
How do you get your core people to like start bringing food?
Did you say bringing food?
Yeah, I said bringing food.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I usually provide the snacks for the first like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I do a sign up. So I'll do a sign up and then just bring the sign up like every week until they've all signed up. Pretty easy. Go ahead.
How do you, what are some like activities that would help your core group to build deeper connections?
Are you talking just?
Repeat the question.
Oh, yeah.
So that we can like really project. You know, Andrea, like yell at me, okay?
What do you mean by like deeper connections? Like
what's an activity that we can do as a core group that will like, I don't know, just bring us closer? Like,
yeah, early on in the year, last year my core played Ultimate almost like right away, and I feel like that's just like something very simple that everybody can catch on to really quick, that's outside of the apartment or outside of wherever you're doing core. We love doing like bonfires. There's something about like guys that they're all just like pyromaniacs, and you put them around a fire and they are entertained and they will talk to each other the whole time about the fire. And then you can easily bring like spike ball or a board game or a football, and suddenly you have like not even just an hour and a half, but like 2-3 hours.
That's one though that I think like really knowing what your like people in core like will matter a lot, because there was a year where what my core really bonded around was playing children's Bible trivia together after core, which was this like box that the guy Warren who hosted us had. It was just like the most simple questions. Some hilarious stories come from that, like one of my guys thinking that the book of Genesis started with the letter J and was boldly professed that was how to spell that word. But yeah, I think you just gotta, I think that's one of the reasons why meeting one-on-one with the people matters a lot early on, because then you know what they're interested in, what they'll connect to, and what'll be fun for them.
Yeah, I also think like we're trying to get these people to initiate. So you can ask them like, what are you interested in? What would you want to host for our core? So like have them kind of plan core hangouts around things that they want to do. One of the goals that I was thinking about was just getting people to really care for one another. They can't care for one another unless they know what one another cares about. So yeah, having them just plan things that they want to do and inviting people to do something that you're passionate about just like endears people to one another. So
yeah, I think also with that you can invite them into like the mundane things of your life, like just get them to go grocery shopping together. Like everyone has to eat at some point, like they need to make dinner. Like there's just ways to like bring people in that make them feel really loved. And like, yeah, like going to a gas station. I took a girl one time to like get my air and my tires filled up, and that's something she talks about a lot, and I didn't even think twice about it. And so I think like just bringing people into like the silly, like what you're already doing makes people feel known, and like encouraging them to do that with each other is really helpful.
Yeah.
Brooklyn? Oh.
Brooklyn, go ahead.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of our girls are really concerned about academics, so how do you kind of like push towards that to get them still?
So specifically, the question is, how do you combat academic excuses to miss score?
Yeah, I feel like you really have to just know the person and the situation through meeting them one-on-one. I've definitely met with so many guys, and the spectrum is very wide with academics. Some people say they need to lock in, and they really do need to lock in. I'm like, yeah, you do need to go study. Some guys, it's that same problem, but they don't know how to study. And so if they say they're going to go study, they could just be looking at a piece of paper with a Netflix show going, and they say that's studying. And then some people really will overstudy and overcommit to a point of anxiety, and that's something totally different to speak into. But I feel like that's really handled one-on-one with your peer team coach, your Corfa coach. I don't know if anyone else.
I had a guy in my peer team a few years ago, and he was telling me that when he was a freshman, he missed a lot. And then but there was this other guy in his core that was always there, and he was like, how do you like go every week to school? And he said, the guy was like, I just planned to go. Like I decided I was going to go every week, so I worked my school around it. And he was like, that blew my freshman mind. Because, but it also it's like, you can do that. So I think it goes back to this one-on-one, like the more you figure out where they're at, the more you can help them think about it. And because it's easy to be like, oh, it's a priorities issue, or it's a time management issue, or it could be a lot of different things. And sometimes it's just a reality and they don't have time to come every week.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, tie up a heavy burden on them that I can't help them lift. But other times I'm like, you got 70 hours this week that you wasted. You didn't need to study during this time.
Yeah.
That was a choice you made, and they need to hear that because no one else will tell them.
Yeah.
Isaac?
What types of behaviors negatively impact core performance on behalf of core?
Oh, so what kind of Corfa behaviors are bad? One that I've had to watch myself on a lot, just because it's a weakness of mine in general, is letting rabbit trails just go too long and engaging that too much. I like silly conversation at times. I like following thoughts, but Cort does have a point, and it does kind of have a time that it should be done, just to respect the people who made time to be there. And so, yeah, I think making sure that if you're going to be talking about a topic, you don't let other people take control of how that topic's going to be talked about. You and your COFA planned, how do we want to cover this topic? And y'all are the leaders. And so you need to make sure that your efforts, how you're answering questions, how you're engaging conversation is towards that goal, rather than just wherever the minds of a handful of people in core are going.
Yeah, I think if you're too quick to answer your own question, won't learn to answer your questions. Yeah. So let there be silence. Let it be awkward. It's going to feel more painful for you than anyone else in the room. But just you could even say we're not going to move on until someone's ready to answer if it's been too long. But I think I'm really quick to jump in because I don't want there to be silence. And so letting them just have the silence to think, I think is really helpful. And it encourages them to have conversation with one another. And that's when you can use returners or your more chatty people to be like, hey, so-and-so, what do you think, to the more quiet people?
Mm-hmm. Go for it, James.
To contribute during the prayer time, request a prayer or take a prayer request.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could say to that.
Okay. Can you repeat the question?
So the question was just how can you get guys or girls in your core to participate in praying, whether that's having a prayer request or saying that they will pray for someone. This is something I feel like in my core, Felipe and I are actively learning, because it is prayer. People have maybe so many ideas of what prayer is or how you do it or what you say. And I feel like, especially speaking out loud, if they're already quiet people, that is something that could be a little more, depending on their range of how they are in their faith or with religion. So right now what I'm doing is I've talked to my returners in my core one-on-one, and I've kind of cast a vision for them of what praying out loud and praying as a community looks like and why we do it. And so I've seen them start to take prayer requests and give prayer requests. So I don't want to just fall back on one-on-one, ask them. But if you notice someone doesn't ever talk, but yet they're coming to core and they're participating, but they seem to be quiet just around prayer, ask them about it. Ask why.
I also think just encouraging people for participating in that, like thanking people and honoring people who are praying a lot, and then also who are being open with their life and sharing that with the core. Handful of years ago, I think it was like 2017, 2018, I was leading with a guy named David, and we had a guy who was an atheist in our core who would never like participate in this part. And the one time that he asked us to like pray for something, it was a little bit silly. He asked us to pray for our like a Hearthstone tournament, I think, that he was going to later that day, which we were like, yeah, we'll pray for that. And we made like a big deal about like the fact that we were excited that he asked us to do that we thought that was still valuable to pray for, even though he was asking it, knowing it was kind of silly to ask for that. But yeah, I mean, you give heat, you give value to the things you want people to do in core, and then they'll catch on, they'll start doing that.
I think the last thing I would add to that one is just like you can get creative in those times as well. Like a series of years ago, I had girls that just were really shy about praying and asking for prayer requests. So we started doing sticky note prayers and would pass them around the room and just be like, yeah, if me and Andrea were paired, we'd pray for each other's sticky notes, swap them, and pray for that week. And that like got us praying in smaller groups. Or like, yeah, you throwing prayer requests in a group me or group chat, like could get them to start doing that. So I think just be creative. You don't have to just sit in a circle and take prayer requests. I think also taking praises, like what are we praising God for this week, can help people open up to that as well. Juke?
So I love this question. How do you balance like when you have a call with like a fair bit of non-Christians, like agnostics, or maybe very like big Christians, like they believe in God, but they don't really live it out. How do you balance like making them feel comfortable in that environment, but also like knowing you have limited time with them, and you know that a lot of them aren't Christian, and so they're not going to heaven. You want to help facilitate them to believe in Jesus. Does that make sense? I worded that very closely.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you balance kind of making core comfortable for non-Christians while also encouraging them to pursue a relationship with God and heating up that value? That's a hard question. I mean, I do think a lot of it is like based in prayer. But I was even thinking about like Brandon's first session from FOJ, the audio, and how like that guy counselor like was counseling the people in, I don't remember where it was, but mostly Muslim like country or something, and encourage them like as far as you find truth from what we talk about, like it's gonna come from Jesus. So I would just like I mean, I don't know, one-on-one is how it's done, right? So having conversations with people like throughout the year, how are you feeling in core, like kind of gauging some of that. But also, yeah, I do like have a precursor at the beginning of the year, and if you have more people in your core that are non-Christian, like you can say that multiple times throughout the year of like, if you have more questions, please come talk to me. And also like we're gonna talk about Jesus, and I would encourage you to like spend some time thinking about that if you're curious. But I don't know if that necessarily answers the question. That's a big one. Any thoughts?
Yeah, Brandon may have something more to add because this was something Felipe and I talked with him recently because we've had some Muslim students showing up to Core and we've had Hindu students in the past. And I feel like it went a long way just kind of making an open statement to our group of like, hey, everyone, just so you know, not everyone in this group is Christian, but this is a group that is open to Christians and non-Christians. Because we may have to like listen to the language that some of your Christians are using because it could easily turn into like, oh, we all in this group think this, or as Christians in this group, we're all just as they're like answering questions, and that could be pretty isolating right away if there is a Muslim in the group. And so there's just, I think, some things that you can listen for and then address one-on-one to remind some students to, especially some of your Christian students who do have the vision and are on mission with you for Jesus. Just to work with you and creating that culture in your core and not against it.
And I would also reiterate what Peter said earlier about question asking, making sure that your questions do include like space for people who are not Christian to still engage and answer with them. I mean, it's just really valuable because obviously like the people who are Christians are still going to answer like what you were looking for without the, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like Christianese that we pump into our questions. But yeah, like you still want to make sure that the people who are not Christian feel like it's a question that is able to be engaged with. So I think just being careful in how you craft those will help.
Janice?
How do you avoid cherry picking? You're like a more specific philosophy, love, using it.
Yeah, the question is, how do we avoid cherry picking scriptures? Yeah. Can you explain like what you mean?
Like, let's say,
And can you speak louder?
well, like, I feel like sometimes for me, I tend to like cherry pick verses that like kind of make sense to my own narrative. So how do we avoid that? Because I remember Peter was doing a sermon on Friday, exegesis, eisegesis. So how do we like just make sure we're like still rooted in the scripture without our own narratives just kind of I don't know.
Can I comment?
Yes.
I think this is really hard, and you're not going to complete it. You're just not going to complete it. But I think asking the question is huge. And I was just with Garrett, and he was talking about preaching this series on 1 Corinthians, and he was saying, he's like, yeah, I'm using these two commentaries. One is this commentary that's like for everyone, it's this thick. And he's like, and one is this commentary that's like this thick. And he's like, but this thick one is just for me. And this one is the one I prep the sermons out of. Right? He's like, it really does go back to I can't bring everything that I've studied or thought about to core, but I can do a little bit of extra work to make sure that I know what the context is. And then if someone says something that like takes us off on a rabbit trail, I can say like, oh, that's actually an interesting point. Let's look at what he says. Let's actually read the few verses right before that, and then see what that changes or how that shapes the way we think of it. So if I've done my homework a little bit more, I can help the group avoid that without always teaching everything I know, or that kind of thing. So that you're not, you guys can comment too, but I do think it's a challenge. And I look back at sermons I preached and I've read commentaries on this stuff and I was like, oh, I would not say that. And so you do your best and trust God's grace, but you can't avoid everything. Otherwise, every core you got to read the whole Bible and talk about the whole thing or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna like echo that, but also I ask the question a lot of the times in my course, like, what scripture reminds you of X thing? So if I'm talking about love, I'm like, what scripture do you think about love? And let them be part of the conversation, because I think that it does, like in course that I've had lots of different backgrounds coming into like the room. It's like, yeah, I'm only have my one perspective, but here's like 5 or 6 or 7 others that like, yeah, I'm like, oh yes, like I didn't even think about that scripture, or I wouldn't have thought about it that way. And you can now have a discussion and really facilitate that kind of conversation. And obviously like have a plan, go with it. But I think that giving like 5 to 10 minutes to let them talk about it with each other really helps them, one, like look into scripture themselves, but also like broadens the scope of what we're talking about.
How would you go about recruiting non-Christians to your core?
Just in terms of like meeting them or asking them to come to core?
Ask them to come to core. I have this one guy that I met in Welcome Week, and he came to a cookout. And he's been in my mind every day since the start of core. I wanted to go so bad, but he's like, I'm not Christian, it's just not my thing. And I don't want to lie to him about what core is. So I just been having a hard time trying to find a way to like recruit him without deceiving him of what core is.
I always tell people, like, if they've never been to core, like, hey, try it one time, and then we can talk. But I feel like a lot of like evangelism or inviting people really just is about doing it. As long as the ball's in your core, like you can keep inviting. We've talked about this like during Welcome Week, but we can't force anybody to come. But we can really pray that God will bring them, even if it's this year, next year, 10 years from now, that they come to God. I ignored every invitation my freshman year, every single one. And I was a Christian at the time, or would have said that I was. But it wasn't until my sophomore year that I kind of gave it a shot. But it really is like we do our best, but we trust God's timing in that. So, but I would just tell them to try it once, see if that works.
Yeah, I think there's also just tons of circles you can still hang out with him outside of core. Core isn't our only, we say like doorway into our ministry. Maybe he's more open to FOJ or the Grove, but if not, if you ever play volleyball after core, I wouldn't even invite him to core if he's already said no and been very clear about that. I would invite him to play volleyball, but it just happens to be with all the guys who just came to core. I had a guy last year who didn't come to core the entire year, but told me he wants to be in our group chat because he wants to know when we're hanging out. And so he'll still like hang out with us. He's now a sophomore, but he just is not ready for Jesus yet. And that's on him. I mean, Jesus walked on this earth and people still rejected him, but there's still other invites that you can send. That came from Cole. Cole said that part earlier today, that Jesus walked on this earth and people rejected him.
This is actually a comment on that other question, but like if God has put him on your heart, like there's a need, and like that's what God's doing in his life, and rejects you, that's okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
How do you like balance a bunch of non-believers and believers? Like you want to plant the seed in the non-believers, but you also want to grow the faith of the believers and not just a surface level of Christianity.
Yeah, so the question was, how do you balance, like, I guess, discussions in core, trying to grow the faith of believers and then also making a space for non-believers? I mean, I think you involve your believers in that. Like, I think that's why we do the core challenge, like every week, of trying to, or at least I do, pairing them up together. You can be really strategic with that and like pair your non-believers with the believers or however that goes. But I feel like sometimes we fear like too much, like not being a space for like our believers to grow or anything like that, because we're tailoring to those non-believers. But some of that goes back to like, what is our goal with core? Like, it's not just like for one group or the other group. It's like for everyone. And honestly, like as I'm doing like FOJs and stuff with people who are, and I say this in every FOJ, like I grow just as much from an FOJ with someone who's been walking with the Lord for 1 year than, me who's been walking with him for a while. But I think like your believers will grow a lot more, like interacting with those non-believers and trying to like understand them. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
How do you kind of like get your guys to stay for like after events before like they'll come to Cort, but then as soon as it's time to leave, they book it. And so it's like the core goes from like 13, 14, 15 people down to like 5 or 6. And it's just like
How you get people excited for after events. Honestly, I think it is good to weaponize FOMO. I think that also goes for like getting people to come to core just in general. Like make the things you're doing after core, make core something people want to be at, something people will like be bummed that they missed out on. I think because a lot of us are afraid of missing out on stuff, we try to like not make people feel bad for missing things. I'm like, if you're doing something fun, post about it in the group me, then post a picture in the group me, make people see what they're missing out on. People will want to come to that more.
Are you asking how to weaponize FOMO?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I also think the thing of like having one of them plan it.
Yeah.
Like if someone besides the core is excited about it, I think they can get other people excited about it. But like last week in core, like I knew that the dinner thing, like after core, they weren't going to come because they had already not planned on coming or like staying afterward. So I just made sure like, okay, next time we're going to do this, like, and getting their input on like, where do you guys want to go for dinner? Like getting them involved in the planning. But I don't think there's always going to be people that want to leave or that have things to do, but you do your best.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I mean, if you guys have any more questions, you always have access to any of us, your Corfa coach, you know. Yeah, okay, let's see. What do I want to start with? Let's start with after events. So we're going to move in a different direction with the Grove on after events. So we have a ton of people. And if we really wanted to scale with the amount of people who are coming, we would need to have like 6 to 8 after events every week. And we could put in all that planning, but what we're observing and hearing is that we like to discuss with our friends afterwards and try to figure out, democratize the process of like, where do we want to go? And then figure that out. So we're going to stop having the shout out after events and just have a blanket encouragement of like, yeah, continue to hang out with one another, be together, do things together, go. So I'm just saying that so that you know, continue to go out together, right? Continue to make those plans and you can make them afterwards and just talk with your friends and figure out, all right, where are we going? Okay. And then, you know, be open to inviting most anyone to come with you. So just wanted to let everybody know that, get us on the same page. All right, another thing, more serious thing. You may have read or you may have heard that we as a student organization focus are suing UTD, UT, and the Board of Regents because of a law that was signed by the Texas legislature over the summer that essentially gets rid of all First Amendment rights for basically anybody who's not a student or faculty of a public university on campus in Texas, and severely takes away your First Amendment rights on many occasions, such as between the hours of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m., you are technically not allowed to engage in any expressive activities, period. Expressive activities meaning like worshiping together, praying together, speaking out loud. It's very broad. It sounds ridiculous, and yet that is what it is. It also bans you from doing those things the last 2 weeks of every semester, fall, spring, and summer. and it bans any guest speakers from coming on campus the last 2 weeks of the semester, amongst other weird things. So we had already been in talks with, we had some legal advice, and we're talking with the university about yard signs late last year. If you guys don't remember, UTD banned all yard signs on campus, which we believe is unconstitutional. And so we were like trying to figure out how to approach that conversation. Well, the Texas legislature passed this law that's basically banning so much more. And so other lawyers who represent, who specialize in First Amendment infringement on college campuses, they've done a couple of cases nationwide. They approached us and asked and got to know what we do, and then asked us to join the list of plaintiffs they have. So we were part of a group suing UTD, UT, and the Board of Regents, including the Retrograde, which is the new name for the Mercury, which was the student newspaper of UTD until they disbanded it because they didn't like what they were saying. And I think there's a music group on campus that is also part of this, and then a few organizations from UT. And so if you want more information, you can always ask. We can send you the bill that was signed into law. As far as how this affects you, it shouldn't really affect, we hope it's not going to affect anything, and it's not going to disrupt anything. Honestly, UTD has been pretty nice overall. And we've worked pretty well with them over the years. Obviously, there's been some like weird things that they do, but we don't anticipate anything bad happening. But the thing is, with this law in place, all it takes is one person who decides, actually, I don't like this group or that group, and they have the power to do whatever they want now. So that's what we're involved in, and yeah.
Yeah, I would just say it's a weird deal because just the way the legal system works, we have to sue UTD. We can't sue the legislature, but this has nothing to do really with UTD. The legislature came through and said, these are the policies that every public campus in the state will adopt. So the question then becomes just to what degree is the campus going to enforce, like how much effort are they going to go to enforce that? But you know, it's pretty like established law that you can't, like you can limit the First Amendment in ways if it's like very disruptive to other people or or to the purpose of the thing. So like we couldn't go set up a big protest that blocks all the doorways to this building or something like that. Like that would be, that's not really, but just deciding that like, hey, half the time you don't have First Amendment rights, which is what they did with like overnight, you don't have them, or these 2 weeks, 3 times a year, these 6 weeks of the year, you don't have First Amendment rights. Like these attorneys are like, there's no way the Supreme Court will uphold this. Like it's just, that's pretty ridiculous and pretty egregious. But so I don't know how long this will take to work its way through. And we're hoping that the court kind of gives an injunction that just basically says you can't enforce this law to UTD while it works its way through the courts. But we're not super worried about our relationship with UTD because UTD, this isn't their policy. They didn't come up with this, and we haven't really gotten any blowback in any way from it. So, but the fear is like we leave it uncontested. And then in a year and a half, some new dean of students who's anti-Christian or anti-whatever decides, hey, we're gonna enforce this thing all of a sudden, and it's much harder to stop something once it's like established than when it hasn't really been enforced yet. So that's where we're at.
Yep.
And it's not just the other one thing to understand is we have like Focus the charity, which is like what we give the money to, and what like is my employer and Peter's employer. Focus Incorporated, it's a nonprofit, and then there's Focus the student board. Those are 2 legally separate entities, and it's Focus the student org that is a part of this lawsuit. Just the UT Dallas student organization. So in that case, that's why anything you read, like some of you may have seen, like it's been featured in Christianity Today, a lot of different newspapers, different things. That's always going to be like the student officers and never one of us, because we don't lead that organization. Your officers do. So.
Yep. So yeah, if you have more questions, you can always ask us. Yep. But yes. No, it's just us. UTD focus.
But the hope is that ultimately the results of this would affect everyone.
Yeah. Because technically the law applies to all public universities, but you just got to keep it focused so the lawyers aren't representing every student in Texas. Yeah. So, Sienna, come take us home.